How we doing, folks? Your host Moose here on the Pitt Panthers Football Network as we have wrapped up Season 3, the 2018 season. We are underway to get into the 2019 season, so we'll have to go through the offseason, and we're going to take you through this in a few parts. But, of course, a number of things that we'll have to get through. As you can see, we wrap up our previous season. Very good campaign for us. Of course, we lost in the college football playoff. And with the way the season is shook out, we've done our end-of-season reviews. You can see we've done very well in this career, in this dynasty. 12-2 the first season. Then we had a big graduating class. We went 8-5 the next year. 12-2 again this past season. Won our first ACC title. And with all that, it's led to a lot of shakeups in the college football landscape. USC 0-12 last season. So, of course, they're going to need a new coach. You can see just some fun. I like to include the coaching carousel here just so you can see some interesting places where coaches are at, and they do hire Robert Prunty from NC State, who was 10-3 that season for NC State. He becomes their head coach. Mark Hudspeth goes from Colorado to Ole Miss. Hugh Freeze got fired after going 4-8, but he then ended up at Southern Miss. Ed Warner from Ohio goes to Colorado to replace Hudspeth, and that sends a shakeup that's going to end up affecting our school when you get down the line. See that? Tom Herman goes from Houston to NC State. He was 12-2 and 11-2 in 2 different years at Houston in the 3 years of our dynasty, so he's been very good. He's going to go to NC State. Houston replaces him with Washington's defensive coordinator Pete Kwiatkowski, who moves there. Should be a good test for him going from that coordinator role. Washington's other coordinator, Zach Hill, takes over at Missouri, who fired Barry Odom. He went to somebody as an offensive coordinator following that. Craig Bull was hired at Syracuse from Wyoming to replace Dino Babers. So you can see a little bit of a mix-up in the ACC there. Good to see. Kansas State's head coach, Bill Snyder, the ageless wonder, retired again finally. And Major Applewhite, who was Ohio State's offensive coordinator, is going to replace him. And then a big couple of jobs here. Boise State looking for a head coach. And this is where we first saw that our head coaches, or our coordinators, I should say, were in demand. Both our DC and our OC were potentially in for this job. Neither of them were hired at Boise, but Ohio came back in, asked about our offensive coordinator. It says Ben Keller, but I'm changing his name to Matt Canada to take over at Ohio. So Matt Keller, or Ben Keller, Matt Canada, hired as the offensive coordinator at Ohio. So that, of course, is a big shakeup in the college football landscape. And then we went and hired our new offensive coordinator. We actually hired the offensive coordinator from Ohio, Brent Vegan. But just so you guys know, an interesting twist, in order to kind of reflect what I want to do, because, as the head coach, I think I should have some command over who we hire. Plus, I have the NCAA football editor. We're not going to hire Brent Vegan. I'm going to move him to New Mexico State, and we're going to instead take Mark Whipple as our head coach, or our offensive coordinator, I should say, which is going to manifest itself in us using a modified version of the UMass playbook. So we're going to see a little bit more shotgun, a little bit more passing, a lot of single back looks this coming season, as opposed to really the I formation and a lot of the good running sets that we had used because we had such a good running team. The fact that we're completely going to have to go in a new direction with all those guys graduating. You see, we lost our top 2 running backs as well as 3 starting offensive linemen. That's a big change, and that's going to require us to go in kind of a new direction for the offense, I think, to reflect more modern style college football, and that's where Whipple's going to come in and play a key role here. But then we go over the players that we lost. Obviously, a good number of seniors that we lost either to graduation or potentially being picked in the NFL draft. And I did like to go through college football and see the guys that were leaving. You can see some interesting guys going away. Gary from Michigan, James Proche from SMU decides to declare to the draft. The only 2 sophomores did. Nick Bosa was one of them from Ohio State, so he'll be leaving. Michael Divinity from LSU. So some big names that we can see here that were either graduating or going to the NFL draft or declaring for the draft as an underclassman. Anthony Jennings from Alabama. I think DeAndre Francois, Florida State's quarterback, does. Blake Barnett, who played a good amount at Alabama, but Jalen Hurts will still be remaining in school, so he'll take completely over the reins for the Crimson Tide. So some big names leaving there. Another big receiver for SMU, Michael Chigbu, goes as well to the draft, 90+ overall. So those are two big receivers they're losing. SMU was great last year. I think they were 10-3 or 9-4, something like that. They may see a bit of a downturn. And then you can see, like I said, DeAndre Francois from Florida State, so they'll have a bit of a shake-up. Some cool transfers as well. I like to take a look at who are the big overall guys that are transferring that we may see play an impact in a few years. 75 overall lineman. 77, Michael Coleman from Clemson decides to transfer to Wake Forest, so an inter-ACC transfer that'll be pretty interesting to see, especially if we get to play Wake in the coming years. I think they're on our schedule this year, and they will be the year after, the way that the game seems to do the scheduling. So we'll actually get to see him for Wake Forest, I think, not this coming season, but the season after. Should be interesting. Jeff Doty, I found this one very interesting. 78 overall left guard, went to Michigan. He was on our board. We finished second in his recruiting last season. He transferred to Purdue, so not happy with his choice in Michigan. Maybe you should have came to Pitt, buddy. You'd be starting this coming season. Another big guy, David Coleman from New York. We were number 2 on his board as well. He chose Ohio State over us. He's leaving the Buckeyes program, transferring closer to home to UConn. I guess he wanted his parents to be able to come to the games or something of that nature, but Coleman decided to transfer away. So I found it very interesting. Two big name guys that we went after last recruiting session ended up deciding to transfer after this season. I found that to be pretty funny to me. Receiver transferring to Louisiana Tech from Texas A&M. So definitely some big names moving around, which was pretty fun just to see those guys. And a third one, Isaac Lambert. He was second on our board. We were second on his board, I should say. He chose Clemson over us. It was a long, drawn-out process that basically took the entire season. He picked Clemson. He's transferring for more playing time, going to play at Louisiana Lafayette. So another guy that we had gone after that decided to leave. This was a fun one too. Clemson just getting absolutely just destroyed by transfers. They lose an outside linebacker, 78 overall as well, who's homesick, wants to go back to Illinois. So I think they lost 75 overall or greater defenders. So, they have a ton of talent, but those are big players to lose. Which is very interesting. So now we look at the draft guys. You see Joe Mixon, Deshaun Kaiser, Jake Browning, Josh Rosen's in there. So a lot of guys, Saquon Barkley, Sam Mustipher, Lamar Jackson, Trace McSorley, a lot of guys that are actually in the show in the NFL, leaving school this year, either through finally graduating and going to the pro draft or declaring and going early. So some big names here. Bryce Love was out for the whole season for Stanford, but he's going. Quadri Olson projected to go in the 4th round, of course, from Pitt. Kerryon Johnson out of Auburn, who, of course, is with the Lions. A couple of great players here that are leaving. Austin Bryant from Clemson, good rusher there. Alex Buchser, of course, offensive lineman from Pitt. Some really big names. You can see a few that it says graduation, guys that would probably, a few of them are actually in the show, but the game, of course, has its weird, Hunter Renfrow, of course, it has its weird rules where, like, you have to be a certain height and weight for different positions to even be considered for the draft. Like, anybody under 6'2" as a quarterback typically does not get drafted. So, that kind of screws with things as far as where guys are projected to go. Like, you're going to see when we get down to like the 92 overall or wherever he is, Kyler Murray, he's just projected to graduate. He's not projected to go to the NFL draft or be a draft pick, which, of course, in real life, 1st overall pick after his Heisman victory. So, things shake up a little bit there, but definitely some big names. Isaac Nott, a tight end from Georgia, Nick Bosa, Wheatley Jr., a lot of guys to see. I think we ended up scrolling down to about 90 overall. We saw all the 90-plus guys. Jerry Tillery from Notre Dame, Sheldrick Redwine from Miami. Some very, very good players here in this list, and I just like showing that because it's fun to see these names that we know, of course, since we're getting far enough into our career mode. Or Dynasty, I should say. We just finished Season 3, so only about another year, maybe at the end of Year 4, maybe a couple of guys left over in Year 5 that are redshirt seniors that are going to be names that we actually know. Everybody else is then going to be, new guys that are locked into our dynasty, but they're not, names that we'll know from real life. So I found it interesting just to be able to see those guys. Kyler Murray, of course, like I mentioned, starting quarterback from Oklahoma, had a really good season last year, 35 touchdowns, 15 picks, ran for 700 yards and a number of touchdowns as well. really cool to just see some of those names. So that's what I enjoy doing, the fun of I have looking through Dynasty and just seeing some of those players and things like that. So that's kind of why I just left that in. We went through it. I didn't just blow through it. I wanted you guys to see some of your players maybe from a school you follow besides just Pitt that you're interested in seeing. Deontay Johnson, I found it fun to bring him up. He's not projected to get drafted, but of course we know he was a third-round pick of the Pittsburgh Steelers, my hometown NFL team, this past season. So I thought that was a fun one to see as well. Deontay, great player, and I think he'd be a great NFL player, and he's shown he can be that. But it's interesting to see just how different guys are in the video game universe compared to what we see every Saturday and Sunday on the actual playing field. So I just thought it was fun to see. We went through kind of our 90 overall guys. And then from the draft for us, Alex Buxer, Quadri Olison, and Elijah Zeiss were drafted in game. Olison in the 4th round, Buxer in the 3rd round. Really good selection for him. And then Zeiss in the 7th round. Then, of course, we're going to leave you on a bit of a cliffhanger here at the end of the episode. End of recruiting season. We have mainly 2 targets that we want to go after to fill out our recruiting board. We don't have a ton of scholarships left because we do have a couple of guys that are going to be transferring and leaving the program. And so we only have enough scholarship spaces remaining for these 2 guys if we can get them. And if we can't get them, then we still may have an empty spot or 2 on our roster instead of filling up the full 70. But it's Jay Keys, rated as an 80 overall athlete. Fantastic looking players. Well, he's projected. We haven't scouted him, so he's projected as an 80 overall athlete. He looks to be best if you look at his stats as a quarterback, a receiver, or a running back. He can really play any of those positions, and I think he'd be a great fit for our program. It's between us and Purdue, so we're going to put a ton of points into him. And then David Butler, the outside linebacker from Georgia, fantastic player as well. We lost both of our starting outside linebackers, and we just returned 2 guys who played outside linebacker this past year. So he's going to compete for immediate playing time if we can bring him in. It's between us and Georgia Tech, and we do have a slight lead in that. So if we can bring these 2 guys in on recruiting, National Signing Day, these will be absolute steals for us. They'll complete our recruiting class and really put us in a great position to succeed for next year. So as always, guys, let me know what you thought of some of the guys leaving, of what happened in the coaching carousel, the hire of Mark Whipple as our new offensive coordinator, what you think of that. And we'll see you in the next offseason video. As always, guys, have a great day. We'll see you soon. Hail to Pitt. Take care. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.